Hi guys, so today we're going to be looking at adaptations, which is the third part of the fourth topic. So firstly, we need to understand that DNA is what codes for genes, and the genes are what make up all characteristics of an organism. So an adaptation is a characteristic of an organism that will help to assist the organism to survive in a particular environment. And we're going to have a look at this in much more detail in this lesson. So there are three types of adaptations: structural, physiological, and behavioral. So firstly, looking at structural adaptations with a focus on animals, we've got a cute little duckling that has webbed feet that allows it to swim in the water more efficiently. So a structural adaptation is the physical makeup or morphology of an organism. So the bird has feathers that allow it to fly, with also it has hollow bones as well to help it to make it lighter so that it can fly with more ease. A zebra has stripes. Now this morphology on a zebra actually helps it to blend into its environment and helps to confuse predators due to that striping. And we've got a polar bear down the bottom, and a polar bear has really a thick coat of fur that helps it to survive in such cold environments. If we have a look at some plant examples of structural adaptations, we've got spines and thorns that are there to protect the plants from predators. So a good example of spines, or sorry, of thorns would be your rose bushes and cactus as well. A lot of them have spines, and that's to help stop predators from eating the plant. Another type of structural plant adaptation is leaf adaptations to suit the environment. So succulents are a type of plant that tend to have thicker leaves, and that's to help reduce surface area to volume ratio so that less evaporation occurs. And the same with this cactus over here. It has a very large or very small surface area to volume ratio, and it stores water on the inside, and that's to help with being in such a harsh environment where water evaporation is a real problem. So physiological adaptations are functional adaptations of features that are not usually visible. So they could be associated with metabolic processes or be based on body chemistry. So we've got an example here of a cane toad, which is an introduced species to Australia. The cane toad has a poison that it excretes in times of danger, and that is there to kill any predators that might want to eat the cane toad. And another example is uh, a jellyfish that has stingers. Moving on to physiological adaptations for plants, a really good example are some of the mushrooms that we see in Australia. We've got often they'll be bright in color, and that's as a warning to other organisms that they're poisonous, but not always will the organism be able to tell that it's a bright color and it should not eat it. So having a look at some physiological adaptations of animals, we've got the king emperor penguin that can dive up to a depth of 550 meters and can hold its breath for 22 minutes. This helps for it to find food in such a harsh environment. Now the males can actually make milk, and the milk is made in the esophagus to feed chicks in the winter before the female arrives back from fishing. And the males can also fast for up to 100 days so that they can nest and look after their egg while the female is out fishing as well. The red kangaroo has other physiological adaptations as well. Water tends to be reabsorbed in the intestine, so very little water is wasted because it lives in a desert environment where water is a scarce resource. It also tends to be active in the early morning and evening when it's cooler, whereas you usually see, if you've ever been to a wildlife park, kangaroos tend to laze around in the shade during the hotter parts of the day, and that's there to make sure that they conserve as much energy as possible. Another really interesting physiological adaptation is that females can put the growth of an embryo on hold until the external conditions improve. So if the environment is really harsh and there isn't a lot of food around, the female red kangaroo can actually stop the growth of the embryo until the food becomes more available or the water becomes more available. So that's a very interesting physiological adaptation. The third and final type of adaptation is behavioral adaptations, and these are associated with patterns of activity or behavior. So this could involve courting rituals, like in this diagram we see of the peacock. The male peacock is trying to appeal to the female peacock by putting on a display of his beautiful tail feathers. Another example is the bowerbird that will build a nest in an attempt to lure in females for to find a mate. Another type of activity or behavior is animals that choose to be active mostly at night and are known as nocturnal animals, like the fruit bats that we see up here. So some of the behavioral adaptations for plants, the main example that we'll be looking at is night blooming cactus. So most flowers usually bloom during the day. However, cactus live in a very harsh environment where it's actually more beneficial for them to bloom during the evening, and they use the animals that are also nocturnal as a way to then spread their pollen from one flower to another. So this is a peacock spider, and it has a very specific mating ritual dance in a hope of attracting a female peacock spider to mate with. I'm sure some of you would have seen this video on YouTube. It is quite famous. So we're just going to have a look at its little mating ritual. And this will often, a little ritual like this, if the female, only females of the spider peacock species will be able to recognize this as the same species. And this is one of those pre-zygotic genetic isolation techniques that to make sure that two different species don't actually mate. And this is another courtship ritual. This is a bowerbird who's doing a courtship dance.
Of New Guinea, there are 42 different species of birds of paradise.
And this bird is attempting to do a courtship dance in trying to attract a female bird.
Is ready. Very impressive, but no one is watching.
So this male has found a female, and he's now doing his courtship dance in an attempt to attract her, in the hope that she will allow him to mate with her.
She retires to consider her verdict. It's hard not to feel deflated when even your best isn't good enough.